I'm your host, Elisabeth, and this is For the Talkers. Hello, talkers. I was just listening to Sweet Creature by Harry Styles, so I'm just feeling like the vibes are up, things are good. If you haven't listened to that song or that album, definitely listen. I feel like it just has the vibes specifically. But hello, I'm so happy you all are here today. Today's episode is with yet another Emily, and we were joking about that because last week's guest was named Emily. My sister-in-law has been on the pod and her name's Emily. So just kind of funny how popular that name is specifically with the podcast. But Emily, today we talked about productivity as a whole, some misconceptions, some tips, and really, truly, I feel like Emily had such great actionable tips. You know, sometimes when you listen to people and you kind of get to the end, it's like, okay, but what? Right? You will not do this at all. The entire episode, it was like, oh my gosh, yes, that makes sense. Thank you. Like, really actionable things that everyone can utilize and apply to really any kind of living. It's definitely geared towards like entrepreneurs, people working from home, those kinds of things. But I was like scribbling down notes the whole time to be more productive, even at my desk job. So this was amazing, really, really realistic advice and tips. And I just felt like when we were chatting, I'm like, Emily is gonna be that person who's always in your corner. So I feel like that just gives you kind of a good idea of the kind person, accepting, helpful, excited. She was amazing. So really, I can't rave enough. And I should just let you guys hear from her. So click on the link in the show notes if you guys are interested in learning a little bit more about her and her platforms. And rate and review the show if you haven't already. It means a lot, super helpful. And we're just going to get right into it. So, let me tell you a little bit more about Emily. Emily is a productivity life coach, mindful productivity speaker, and founder of the Productivity Flow. Her mission is to empower self employed women to overcome mindset barriers, plus optimize systems, tools, habits, and routines so they can effectively boost their productivity and achieve that work from home lifestyle of their dreams. Through her blogs and freebies, one on one coaching, online course, and public speaking, Emily unites lessons she's learned from therapy with the trials and errors of working for herself from home to offer realistic and sustainable ways to boost both productivity and a positive frame of mind. And I can attest to all of that. She did all of those things so wonderfully. I'm so excited for you guys to listen. So here is Emily. Hey, hello, Emily. So good. It's kind of funny. I think you're like the third or fourth Emily I've had on the pod. So yeah, it's true. It's true. I just realized that I looked at your name and I was like, wait, I was just talking to an Emily the other day. That is so awesome. Okay, do you want to start with your happy, funny, sad moments?
Honestly, just right off the top of my head, my happy moment is getting my dog. I rescued her and she is my pride and joy. I named her Madonna because she's such a prima donna and I adore her. So that's definitely my happy moment. My funny moment, I'm kind of now realizing it's probably not that funny, but
I
so
do that every week, so relatable.
But my boyfriend and I recently started this thing where when we're like thinking, instead of like pausing or saying that we're thinking, we just go, hold on, I'm buffering, buffer, buffer. And like we literally like will buffer. And like it's just so weird, but it's like so relevant for me right now. I feel like I'm constantly buffering lately. So that's my funny moment. And then
Yeah, relatable.
right? And then my sad moment, I would say at the beginning of COVID-19, when the pandemic happened and lockdown happened, I had this 3-week period where I lost 2 jobs and I was graduating from college. So my graduation ceremony was no longer happening. And then I could no longer afford rent, and I had to completely trash my plans that I had for post graduation. So that moment for me was kind of rock bottom, and definitely is like one of the most sad moments that I have felt in the last like 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I was graduating high school when COVID hit, so
There you go.
I
So you
get
get
that
it.
of graduations. Yeah.
Yeah. You had to
Yeah.
stay in it. I was
Ter
luckily leaving school, so it was like the very tail end for
Right.
me. You, though, had to stay in it. That seems way more tough.
Yeah. Well, we got through, so
There
that's
we go.
the important part, right?
Amen.
Okay. Well, my sad is kind of simple and also kind of self-inflicted, but I had braces, and so I had, like, a permanent retainer put in on my bottom teeth, and no problems, whatever. Well, the other day, one, like, totally broke loose, and I could not leave it alone, and so, after a couple days of it just driving me crazy, I just, like, took it off, and, it, like, just destroyed my mouth. It was like
Ooh.
having braces all over again, like, my gums hurt, my tongue
Oh my
hurt, my
God.
cheek hurt, like, everything, and I was like, "'Kay, that was kinda my fault because like, I was impatient and ripped it out, but it still made me very sad."
So fair. I
Uh,
actually used to have permanent retainers, so I get what you're saying. They are so annoying.
yeah, yeah. I was like, "I'm just gonna be done with you." Um And then my funny, I don't have, like, a specific moment because I'm horrible at retelling situations. I just butcher it every time, and I'm like, "That wasn't even funny anymore." But I have, like, 4 new coworkers, and they're all hilarious, and they just love to come up and chat, and it's super fun.
So fun.
So they've just been making me laugh, and it's very nice at work where normally I'm, like, not the happiest.
No,
So
that
that was
matters.
definitely yeah, yeah, super nice. And then my happy is that I just feel like I've had some great episodes lined up
Oh,
and recording, and I just feel like the ball is rolling in the right direction. And so that's been making me really happy the past couple
love that.
months, just recording episodes. And today is one of those that I've just really been looking forward to. And I'm like, I'm excited for this one to be in the top 10. So
Yes. Oh, amen to that. Love that.
okay, well, so for everyone listening, I put up an Instagram question box and got some questions for Emily. And so we're just kind of going to jump right into those to get a little bit more of your expertise, and then we'll kind of go from there. So,
Perfect.
Emily's going to be talking to us about productivity today. That's, the overarching theme. So, first question is, how often should we plan breaks?
Such a good question because I feel like you'll relate to this. Taking breaks is so hard for some reason. Like once we get into the groove, we don't want to stop. And then at the end of the day, we just become a couch potato and we're so
Yep.
drained and we don't want to do anything. And so I firmly believe that breaks is kind of like the secret to having energy after work. I'm going to say something about the brain, and that'll kind of explain why I think what I think. So, the
Perfect.
brain can only really focus at its most effective and use its energy for roughly an hour, right? After an hour, our brain naturally just starts to become less effective and it needs a chance to recoup. And what's awesome, it only needs like 5 to 10 minutes to recoup. So it's super fast. We don't need to be taking like 30-minute breaks, but 5 minute, 10-minute breaks every hour, 2 hours is going to really tremendously change your entire day because you'll have so much more energy because you're allowing your brain that chance to actually recoup again. And so when you take your break, I highly recommend that you get off screens. So don't scroll on your phone, don't go to TikTok, don't check your emails, just away from screens and actually let your brain rest for a little bit. And so just doing that, even if you can do it 3 times a day, 5 times a day, is so incredibly helpful. I really strongly recommend, though, at least at the, or not at least, I really strongly recommend doing it at the end of every hour, even just 5 minutes. So helpful.
So screens is definitely probably the go-to for a break. It's like, oh, I'm gonna have a break, and then you get on your phone. So what are some other things that maybe you recommend or you like
Yeah.
doing when you take a break?
Oh, such a good question. Because I feel like we always just need, like, okay, don't do this, but then what do I do? Like, help me actually, like, give me
Right.
something. So
Yeah.
I'll just explain a couple of the breaks that I do that I personally love to do that I find really re energize me. Number one, I love snacks. I will always go get a snack, like, whether it's popcorn, coffee, whatever. Give me 5 minutes to eat, and I'm a happy camper. So that's number one. I always love walks. Getting out for like 10, 15, 20 minutes is so great, especially if you live in like a sunny area. Really fantastic for your energy. And then also, meditation is a great little mindful break. It allows you to really just calm down and to reset. So, doing like even just a 3 minute meditation will totally change your energy. So those are just a couple of the things. Some other things that I love to do, like I have an adult coloring book that I love to just use, and like I'll go and color for a couple minutes and then come back to work, or I'll read like one of my murder mystery books that I'm kind of obsessed with right now. So I'll just like kind of get out of the work mode for a couple minutes. Maybe I'll stretch, do something physical, but really just escape the work mode for just a couple of minutes is the key.
I love that. Those are all perfect. And you're so right. It's so frustrating when it's like, don't. It's like, okay, then what do I do? So those are some great examples. When you were saying that, that made me think of a random fact I heard one time. Don't even know if it's true, but I heard, you shouldn't try and like do homework in bed
Mm.
because your bed is where you sleep. And so is that similar to like being productive? So if you're working in one space, should those breaks be taken in other places or does that make a difference?
I don't think it makes too much of a difference. So I love that you brought that up because I do believe that if you have a workspace, such as an office, a desk area, whatever, make that only your workspace. So only work in that area because then it signals to your brain, hey, it's work time, right? So that's why that's important. And you're often hear like, don't work in your bed or don't work in a bunch of different places, just because it's really about training your brain, right? So if you wanted to take a break, you don't necessarily have to leave your working area, but more create some type of separation. And what I really mean by that is kind
Mm,
of like a mental separation. You don't necessarily have to actually leave, but if you can like maybe turn your back or change your positioning or just switch it up a little bit, that'll also signal to your brain, okay, it's break time. And then when you turn back into your work area, you're coming back into work, signaling to your brain that it's work time. So it's really just about being intentional with what you decide to do. And it
mm,
doesn't need to be extreme. I think that's where a lot of us get really lost in tips and stuff is because we are all or nothing, right? But it doesn't have to be
yep.
that way. It's just a little bit. And I think that's the little changes are the sustainable changes and the ones that truly make a big difference.
Absolutely. That's so perfect. I'm like, write that down, write that down. That's all so
I
good.
love it.
And we're only in the first question. That's amazing. Okay, so the next question we got was what's the best way to structure your Mondays or whatever day is the first day kind of your work week?
I love this question because I firmly believe that structuring your Mondays really starts on Friday. So, what I mean by that is I'll actually just give an example with my own routine. I think that'll explain it a little bit easier. So on Fridays, what I
Perfect.
do at the end of my workday is I outline my next week. And the reason I do that is to avoid those Sunday scaries that we can so easily get over the weekend when we get anxious and we're just like thinking about what's upcoming, but we aren't totally sure about what's upcoming, but we just know we have a lot. That's when anxiety builds and that's when overwhelm and stress builds. So let's eliminate that by actually outlining what is upcoming. So that way the uncertainty is no longer there and we can overcome that anxiety a little bit, right? So that's a big, big piece. And then the way that you should always start, I firmly believe every day, not just Mondays, but it's with a workday startup ritual. So what that is it's just a workflow or a small routine, I should say, of activities that you do, very simple, easy to do, short activities that you do in the same order at the same time every day. And the reason that you do this is to, again, signal to your brain that it's time to start work. So, what I do every single Monday through Friday, every single morning, is I will first meditate for 15 minutes, and then I will write down my affirmations, and then I will write down what I'm grateful for, and then I will write down my daily goal, and then I review my time blocked calendar, then I dive into my first task. And I typically make my first task of each day the same. So I will always begin my day with writing my blogs because I know I want to post a certain number of blogs every day. And so if I'm able to make that a habit, writing my blogs a habit, then I know I'll hit that goal, right? So I kind of bring that into my routine a little bit to ensure that I always stay on track. So doing that in your own life, maybe it's about whatever project or task that you have going on at the time and it's weighing on you, start your day with it. Get it over with a little bit, and then you can move on to everything else that you have. So, setting your day up with that structure is really important. And it doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be intense. The easier, the better.
I love it. Those are all perfect, and I love that you noted that. I think that's something that I miss is the same order. I do a
Yeah.
lot of the same things, but not in the same order, so I'm definitely gonna try that. I can see that making a big difference
Yeah,
in my mornings and my start.
it totally does. I think when you can routinize a set of actions, you just really turn it into habits, right? And I think productivity has a lot to do with habits because if we have unproductive habits, it's going to be hard to be productive, right? It's just like doesn't go together. So learning
Right.
how your brain works and kind of aligning your schedule with your natural brain how it works, like I just said, it is so effective, right?
Those are great. That's
Not at all.
okay. So the next question we have is how to manage productivity through the menstrual cycle.
Such a good question. And honestly, one that I constantly ask my therapist because I feel like lately I have been kind of relearning my energy fluctuations and patterns while I'm on my period. And it's been such a journey. And I think that goes for pretty much every woman out there.
Yeah.
We feel so different when we're on our period versus when we're not, right? And so
Yeah.
it's really about acknowledging that and being okay with that and giving yourself a
Mm,
little bit of grace, right? Because I know I have definitely been stuck in expecting myself to do the same amount of work or the same intensity of work that I do when I'm not on my period. But even though I am not feeling the same. And that's kind of crazy if you think about it. If you take a step back and you realize, oh, I have these unrealistic expectations of myself, no wonder I can't hit it. Then no wonder I get so frustrated with myself. And then I reset those unrealistic expectations. And then it turns into a cycle. So we just want to avoid that cycle mentally by acknowledging, hey, I'm going to have less energy or I'm not going to be on my A game as I am the rest of the month. And that is okay because my body is doing a miracle right now and it is working. Maybe it's not the kind of work that'll pay me, but it's working, right? So giving yourself that grace is so important. Always want to start with that. And then, secondly, plan to do a little bit less than if you were not on your period. So, let's say you normally outline like 10 tasks for the day, right? Okay, well, if you're on your period, then only outline five. And if you can get those five done and you still have some extra energy, then by all means, add another task or two. Go for it. But if you are struggling to get those five done, then just do three and be like, hey, I did three. And like kind of flip the perspective and just be proud of yourself for whatever you do get done. That it's really a mindset game, honestly, when you're on your period. So just having some grace, planning a little bit less, and being proud of yourself.
totally. Those are great reminders. And I love that you said your body's working. So if you're getting 3 tasks done, okay, well, your body took care of the rest. She's working overtime today. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I like how you phrased that. That was perfect.
Good. I'm glad.
Okay. The next question we have is, how do you get past the hump of not wanting to do anything at all?
Oh my gosh, I literally had to do this. So last week, I went on a week-long vacation, which was so amazing. And then Monday
Yes.
comes, and I'm just like, I have to work again? Oh my God. I don't want to do this. How am I going to do
Right.
this sucks. And so I just kind of spent like an hour almost like procrastinating. I may have shed a tear or two because I was so frustrated. And then I kind of realized, you know what, Emily, let's practice what you preach here. Like let's implement some of the things that I coach on, right? And so one of the biggest things that works like a charm for me every single time, and I've gotten so much good feedback on with all of my clients, is setting a timer. So let me kind of explain how I do this. The way that I go about it is I will have kind of a list of tasks that I know I don't want to get done, that I'm dreading procrastinating. But if I can set a 15-minute timer and then choose just one task and then just one piece of that task, right? So breaking it down a ton, baby steps, and then setting that 15-minute timer, promising myself, okay, for 15 minutes, I can sit down and do this. I can do 15 minutes. I'm so capable of that. So let me just do it. Let me just power through it. Set that timer and go. And then once the 15 minutes is up, if you are really not into it yet, then just be like, you know what? I tried. Let's try a different task. Let's do another 15 minutes and then just do it again, until you get into the groove, right? So it's about just kind of not thinking about it, but just doing it. Action is really the only way you can overcome any kind of negative emotion like dread or procrastination. So, definitely just kind of powering through, setting that timer, setting that urgency really helps mentally get you over that hump.
Totally. I love that. And I like that you can say, like, if you try one of the tasks and that's not working out, try a different one. I
Yeah.
think that's great. You can me and my partner were talking the other day. Sometimes you like set your own personal goals and standards, and then when you don't meet them and you get mad at yourself, it's like, back it up. You're the one who said that, so you can just reframe it. You don't have to like get so upset and mad at yourself that you didn't do something that you told yourself you had to do. So just
Oh
kind of
my
like
gosh.
reworking that.
I feel like you literally just described so many of my coaching clients and all of us. I feel like because I mostly coach freelancers, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs. And so, like, we are really good at being accountable, right? Because we're work for ourselves. And so when we don't follow through and we don't hit that goal, we somehow think that we're not good enough anymore. And like it leads into this whole cycle. And so taking that step back, like you said, and being like, you know what? I set this standard. I can change this standard. It's okay. Like
Right. Yeah.
it's not final, right? Like also, who
Yeah.
out there is watching me and judging me? Nobody cares,
Right.
right? Like literally no one else cares except for you. So do what works for you, not what you think should be the ideal, right?
Totally. Yeah, such a good reminder. It's something that
Yeah.
like seems so simple, but you really have
Oh,
to like consciously say, okay,
yep.
it's okay.
You
No one
know,
hates you because you didn't get your to-do list done today.
and you know what? I love that you said that. It's very conscious, right? Because we have to be intentional with it, with intentional with our goals, with our standards, but also with our self-talk and the way that we treat ourselves if
Mhm.
we don't hit those goals and standards, right? I think that's such a big piece that we so often ignore because we're so used to that critical voice in our heads. And like, let's kind of acknowledge that voice does not have to be, right? It doesn't have to be so
Mm,
hard on yourself. So if you can change that voice a little bit, you will stop feeling this pressure that you're putting on yourself because you're realizing, oh, it's my voice. I have the power. I can control this. Like,
absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I'm like, I'm gonna save that and just replay that every day.
oh, I love that.
Reframe it. I love it. Okay, I did not write in this next question, but I basically should have because I do this. Is it bad to be productive late at night?
So you actually might be surprised at my answer. I don't think it's bad at all.
Okay.
You're like, oof, thank God.
Yeah, yeah. Don't have to get mad when it's midnight tonight and I'm in
Yeah.
the middle of a project.
You know what? I think so. Let me just say, everybody has different energy chronotypes. So we all have kind of heard of like the night owl and then the early bird and like those people who just are really energetic at night or really energetic in the mornings or maybe afternoon is their moment, right? And so understanding what chronotype you are and knowing what energy fluctuations and patterns you have throughout not just the day but also the week and the month, particularly for women, the month really matters as well. Understanding your energy like that will help you align your schedule to what works best for you. So if you know that you are energetic at night, that you can focus a little bit more, maybe because it's quieter or whatever your reasoning is, don't beat yourself up for it. In fact, own it and plan for it, right? Be intentional with it. So create a little routine so that way once you end work, you know work is then over. And then you have a nightly routine that you then go into to prep yourself for bed and calm down your mind. And then you can go to sleep. So it's just really about setting up those rituals for yourself. So that way you still have that balance, but you can maximize your own energy the way that it naturally is. Because when we try to change our chronotypes, we are just fighting against the grain. It's not going to happen. Your energy is the way that it is, right? So work with it, own it, and yeah, just
Yeah, totally. That's great. The next question is, what small habits have you seen make a big difference in someone's productivity?
so there are really two habits that I think if people can adopt these two habits, they will see a massive transformation in their week, I should say. And the first habit is decluttering. So decluttering both your physical environment, the space around you that you work in, but also your digital environment. So making sure that you don't have a like 50 tabs open in one screen and making sure that your desktop is organized and you know where everything is and not allowing your email to like clutter into like 1,000 emails that just trigger overwhelm, you know? So daily, like 5 minutes a day. This is part of my workday shutdown ritual, which I'll get into in a second. But 5 minutes a day, if even, I would actually say like 1 minute a day. I just declutter my office and I just put things away because then when I come back into my office and it's all organized and clean, I feel better, right? I don't feel that overwhelm because if there's clutter around us, our brain can't help but notice it and process it. And that takes up a lot of energy, right? And so if we can just help our brain a little bit by getting rid of those distractions, that's going to make a huge difference. So that's one. And then I already briefly mentioned this, but a workday shutdown ritual. So, you know how earlier I was kind of describing the workday startup ritual, the routine that you have to
Yeah.
start your workday? Well, this is just the opposite. This is the shutdown ritual to end your workday. And the reason that I think this is tremendous on our productivity is because it allows for balance. And balance is so important for productivity. So that way we don't burn ourselves out. And so we can actually be effective and efficient when we want to be effective and efficient. So closing down your work at the same time or at a designated time that you plan for, and having a little set of routine that you do to kind of signal to your brain, okay, work is over. It's time to go into my personal life now. That's huge, right? And it also helps you organize your day for tomorrow because part of your workday shutdown could be to outline tomorrow, which is in my workday shutdown. And it's so helpful because that way in the morning, I already know what's coming. I don't have to guess. It's already outlined for me. And that's huge. So I don't sit there, ruminate about it, procrastinate a little bit, dread a little bit. I just avoid all of that by planning it the day before. So, doing those two things, having a workday shutdown and decluttering, can really, really transform your weekly routine and your productivity.
Yeah, and I love that. Those really are two small habits. So that's so nice. Like you're saying, it's not this like big, huge, you have to change your whole day kind of a thing. It's really simple.
Yeah, my motto is 1%. Like just 1% shifts, move 1% forward at a time, because that's really how you create the sustainable change. And what's the point of
Mm,
changing if it's not going to last? So, baby steps, bite sized pieces, whatever is feasible for you, that's a little bit of a push, but you can do it. That's where you should stick because that's how it's going to last.
that's great. Um, I was thinking, do you have any recommendations for people who might already be very cluttered and say have a lot of emails or something like that? Like, how do they get to a point where it is something small?
Oh, I love that question. So I think it's really about breaking it down, right? Look at what is bothering you the most, what's taking up the most energy, and start there. Because if you can slowly eliminate what's hurtling you, then the rest of it is going to feel so much easier to do, right? So starting with kind of like the big fish and then working your way down. And then let's say you have this big, like, let's say you have a bajillion things on your desktop and you just look at it and you start sweating because you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. Like, there's like years of stuff on here. A client of mine recently did this with me, so it's so top of mind. She literally had like 2 years of content and things on her desktop that she had not looked at, but it was driving her crazy because she couldn't even see her background, right? And so what we
Right.
did is we literally just took slivers of her desktop and focused on one little sliver at a time. So for 1 week, she literally just focused on getting the most left hand sliver done. And then the next week, she focused on the next like little inch of the screen, right? So really breaking it down to such small steps that you're like, oh, I can do this. That's not hard. Like, that's okay. Right. I think that's really the essence of how you get started in pretty much anything.
Totally. Just chip away at it.
Chip away at it. Exactly.
I love it. Okay. Um, so this question I actually thought was pretty interesting. So they asked, should productivity be everyone's goal?
I think that is such a powerful question because it really plays into this kind of like cultural push that we have right now with the hustle culture. And everybody is so focused on getting more done in less time. And I think COVID was kind of a nice break from that because we all realized, oh, we need to take care of ourselves. Like mindfulness does matter. But then now we're kind of reverting back into the hustle culture again. And my mission is to really help people overcome that mentality. So, no, I do not think productivity should be the goal, but I understand why so many people feel that way. I think it's really pushed on us, right? And what I do think should be the goal is balance. So, productivity is a tool to help you get to that goal, right? Because if you can be efficient and effective in a lot of what you do, you'll inevitably get to balance. So, I would think of it more as like a tool rather than the goal, because it's just when we focus on being so productive, we end up burning ourselves out because we're just focused on action and we're not really being intentional with it, right? So definitely focus on balance over productivity.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. I know a lot of people always have like questions and concerns about burnout.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that like reframe of productivity is not the goal and that can turn to burnout. I like that.
Yeah.
That's like clicking in my brain like that makes sense.
Good. I'm so glad. I feel like that's really kind of the essence of a lot of my coaching too. It's like overcoming this need to constantly do, to constantly act. Because I feel like we're all stuck in it. And I think we're trained to be that way starting in like school, right? Like we are constantly doing for like from 8 a.m. till 3 p.m. Like just go, 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 go as little kids, right? And then we go in, and then we don't get a break. We go right into work. And so we're really conditioned to be that way. And I argue that it's a big reason why we are feeling an epidemic of loneliness and why depression is such a large, large issue right now. And we have all of these mental health issues, but we're not changing the way that we live our life, right? And I think if we can overcome this need to constantly really focus on having that balance, that'll cure a lot of these mental health challenges that we see.
Totally, yeah. I think that's super true, and productivity should just go right in the toolbox to improve day to day and really achieve that balance.
Exactly.
That is perfect. So the last question from the listeners is are some people just born productive?
I don't think so. I think we are very much, kind of like what I was saying with school, like we're very conditioned to be productive, to constantly go, 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 go. But, excuse me, if you look at like evolution, right? And how we were back in like the caveman days, they were not focused on being productive. They were focused on survival, right? So we are really born to survive. That's what our brain's purpose is, right? And so we can be born with hurdles to being productive. Like I know for me, a big hurdle has been ADHD. I find it hard to focus a lot of the time. And like, I can get so distracted and like, but learning that about myself, I then find tools that help me use my brain as a superpower that it is. So I don't think we're naturally born to be productive. I think we learn how to be productive, and we can learn it in a healthy way or in an unhealthy way. And unfortunately, majority of society has learned it in an unhealthy way, which, like I mentioned, leads us to burnout. And my whole goal is to help people see it in a healthy way, in a balanced, more holistic, mindful way. Because if we can train ourselves like that, we will naturally just, number one, be a lot more productive, but we'll also just be happier because we're not going against the grain we're not going against our brain, I should say.
Yeah. I love that. I think too, like, there might be certain personality types that,
Mhm.
like you're saying, someone without ADHD has the ability to focus a little better. But I see your point and I agree, like, productivity isn't necessarily
Yeah.
a personality trait.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can be super organized. Like I feel like I was
Sure.
born very like an organized person. I love me an organized declutter space. Like if you my boyfriend moved
Yeah.
in with me, it was like a big thing. I was like, we have to keep everything organized. But that's just so like, yes, you can definitely be born with these traits that enable productivity, but I don't think you're born being productive, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. So you mentioned tools, and so I'm curious what productivity tool like you really rely on that's you've seen the most results with.
So I love mindful productivity. That's really my focus, right? And so most of the tools that I use, I really try to not make them digital. I really try to avoid apps on my phone because I just know myself. I'm going to go to Instagram. I'm going to go to my texts. I'm going to get distracted. I know that about myself. So I just avoid it, right? I really try to make all of my tools kind of physical. So, one of my favorite tools that I preach about to everybody are my cube timers. I actually have one right here. So, I love these because they are number one, they don't have distractions, right? Like a phone does for your timer. It's just physical. And then you also like can just flip it and it starts and you flip it back and it ends. And it's that easy. But I love using it to time block my day. So like I have two different timers, one that has like a 60-minute timer, and then I have a different one that's like 10 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll set the 60-minute one, and then I'll do like a bunch of smaller tasks for 10 minutes at a time,
Mm.
just flipping my timers. But I keep myself on track. So then that way I don't just start doing something else, get distracted. And so my cube timers have truly changed the game for me and for any client that adopts them too, they preach about it and love them. So they're super cheap on Amazon, super easy to use. Kids even love them too. So I always recommend those.
Yeah, I've never seen those before, so those are really
Yeah,
cool.
they're so cool. They're so fun. And you can get like all different
Probably,
colors to match your outfit.
yeah, probably helpful too to remember to take breaks because I like how you have the system of like a big timer and a little timer. So then when the big timer goes off, you're like, okay, now it's a break. I like that.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
You just described the Pomodoro technique, honestly. So that is perfect. That's a great way to use them.
Okay, well, you had mentioned therapy earlier, and that was another one of the questions I had for you. So I would love to talk a little bit more about how therapy has played into your productivity journey, how it's gotten you here.
Such a good question. So, I'm very open about my therapy experience. I feel like a lot of people typically aren't, but I love talking about it because I think we need to normalize it. We need to normalize help. It's okay to have somebody that guides you, right? You're not meant to go through life alone. If we look back into evolution, humanity was in tribes, right? Because we weren't meant to be by ourselves. So you're not meant to process things alone. So I just wanted to say that, and just like, if you are thinking about therapy, try it. It can't hurt. So I actually started going to therapy when I was really, really young. I think around like 10 or 12 years old. My parents sent me because they were getting a divorce and they wanted me to process the divorce in a healthy way. And looking back, I give props to my parents for number one, agreeing on something as they're getting a divorce. That's hard in and of itself. But then agreeing on something so progressive for its time, because I was the only kid I knew who was in therapy at the time, right? And I kind of thought it was because something was wrong with me, or maybe because my parents like thought I was the reason for the divorce. There were all kinds of reasons going all along in my head. But sharing that with my therapist and having that back and forth and being able to unpack these kind of thoughts and emotions was so foundational in number one, just having a very healthy and happy relationship with my family, but also in understanding myself and learning how I worked and how I process things, right? And so learning that about myself, giving myself that foundation has really played a role in how I work and how I do life, right? And so if I hadn't had that foundational mental health awareness starting from such a young age, I doubt that I would be coaching today because mindfulness probably wouldn't be as part of my life as it is, right? So it's definitely played a role. And I have not stopped going to therapy ever since I was a kid. So I bring a lot of the lessons that I learned from my therapist over the years into my coaching sessions because I feel it's a holistic approach that we all need. And if we don't address our mindset, if we don't address our self talk, then our productivity will inevitably suffer because action comes from our thoughts. So if we're having really negative thoughts, we're not going to take the actions that lead us to our goals, right? And so understanding that and learning, okay, how can I like change my mindset or alter my thoughts or do whatever the hurdle is? How can I overcome that in order to go throughout the motions way more easily? I firmly believe that's what therapy is truly about. And so doing that with somebody you trust and know it.
Yeah, wow, that is so inspiring. I love it. I would also agree, therapy can be a great tool. And I love that. I love that you utilize that in your coaching. That is a very well-rounded approach. I think sometimes we view a lot of things in boxes,
Mhm.
and it doesn't always have to be that way. So I love that.
Yeah, having somebody challenge you is huge, right? Because we all have our own stories. We all have our own, like, this is the way it is. But is it? Does it have to be? Like, let's unpack it and, like, actually understand what are the other options are. And, like, let's realize that we have the control. We can make the impact that we want to make. We just have to understand it first. We have to know where it is that we want to go, right? So therapy is just a big helpful way to do that.
Totally. So, talking about your coaching a little more, a big part of who you're coaching is like self-employed women, right? So, tell me a little bit more about that and maybe successful interaction you've had, I guess.
Yeah, totally. So, my coaching is, like you said, for self employed women. And what I focus on is helping you overcome different mindset hurdles as well as optimizing your habits, systems, tools, and routines. So that way you can not just boost productivity, but actually achieve the work from home lifestyle that you have in your dreams, right? So, that's the overarching goal. And then I have two programs that help you do that. So, one program is a productivity life coaching program, and that one is really all about overcoming stress and overwhelm and optimizing your systems and organization to do that. So, we'll dive deep into whatever struggles you are having and help you create those habits that are sustainable. So that way, when we're done coaching, you can still take everything that you learned and blossom with it. And then my second coaching program is an accountable mindset coaching program. So it's all about accountability. We are really good at being accountable to others, but it's so hard to be accountable to yourself. And for some reason, like self care, like all of the self stuff is the first thing out the window, right? So it's like, how do you maintain that accountability that you have with others, with yourself, especially when working for yourself from home? So that's what that program is all about. And then, of course, you'll have a goal that you want to reach, and I will help you reach it. And so, my favorite, honestly, I guess, story about a client that I recently had, she came to my accountable mindset coaching program and she had a corporate job, but also was starting a business of her own, a fitness business. And she really wanted to leave her corporate job behind and fully go into her own business. Excuse me. We got her to hit that goal. And it's just like so awesome to see somebody like really unsure about, like, I don't know if I can run this business. I don't know if I'll make enough money. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And then going through the motions with her and empowering her and enabling her to leave her job to start a successful business was so fun and so cool. And like that is really like kind of the essence of how I want to empower other people, just to hit those dreams.
Absolutely. That's amazing. And that's really cool that you have two kind of programs, right? Because it's not necessarily one size fits all. So that is a really great resource. Um, so we talked a lot about, things that like tips and tricks and things that are helpful. Um, what's a common like mistake that you see when people are trying to become more productive, and how do you kind of counteract that?
I think a big hurdle that I so often see is people trying to fit too much in and trying to change too much at one time. Because I think I mentioned this earlier, I think our brains just naturally do this all or nothing mentality, right? Where we want to go all in, fully commit to something, and if we can't do it perfectly, we don't do it at all. And like overcoming that perfectionism and that all or nothing mentality is really, really hard, but it's really, really life changing because it helps you release those pressures and expectations, those self imposed expectations that we often have. And so I think really the best way to overcome that is, I'm going to say it again, take it just 1% at a time. Like my motto, just bite sized pieces, right? Sustainable change is really what we're after here. And so let go of the idea that if you can't do it perfectly, you shouldn't do it at all, because honestly, a little bit is better than nothing. And if you can do 1% every single day, you will hit 100% way faster than way before you even think you can, right? Because you're just building up that confidence with each 1%. So letting go of the perfectionism, embracing the 1% mentality, huge in helping you let go of that all or nothing mentality.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is great. Really, there's a few simple things that we can do, right? And most questions probably can be answered by that. The 1%, chip away at it. That's great.
Honestly, you're probably right. Most questions can definitely be answered with that. But like, how do we do that 1%? Like, that's the strategy, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's the trick there. That's where the coaching comes into play.
Precisely.
Okay, well, if anyone is feeling like inspired by this conversation today, I know I have a ton of amazing women who are self-employed. Um, how can they find you? How can they reach out to you and sign up for some of your services?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at theproductivityflow.com. I'm also on Instagram at theproductivityflow. And then all of my coaching programs and my services are up on my website. I also, if you want more free tricks, tools, resources, I have a blog with a ton of them. And I create my own little products for you so that way you can actually implement all of the things that we talked about today. So definitely go check that out.
Perfect. Okay, and then I will link that below in the show notes. So if anyone's interested, you can just click there. Super easy as a link. But I kind of want to end with a lighter question. So at the beginning, you mentioned that you love having a snack when you're taking a break. Do you have a go-to or favorite snack right now?
Oh, yes. So my go-to is, of course, I have an answer for that right away. My go-to is Skinny Pop cheddar popcorn. I can eat that. I can eat the family size pack of that in like one sitting. It's pretty dangerous, honestly. Like, I feel like I need to kind of calm down on it lately. And then I also really love me a glass of chocolate milk. Like, if you can give me a glass of chocolate milk, I will love you forever.
And together, popcorn and chocolate milk, that sounds like the perfect snack.
Literally. Not the healthiest, but the tastiest.
We'll take it. Absolutely. Okay, well, that is perfect. Thank you so much for joining me today. You seriously had so many amazing things to say. I know everyone will have learned something from listening today, and I just love your energy that you're bringing. It's great.
Thank you so much. And thank you, listeners, for the amazing. Like, those were awesome. I really, really appreciate it. I had so much fun today.
Truly. Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for listening. Remember to leave a rating and review, subscribe, and come back next Thursday for a new episode. And remember, you matter and what you have to say matters. So join me here with For the Talkers.